I've got Michaela Weber, GM of Payments at BigCommerce with me. Michaela, welcome. How are you?
Thanks, Nick. Great to be here. Yeah, I'm good on this very cloudy, typical London spring morning.
I thought global warming was going to sort all this out for us.
Unfortunately,
but it's just
no.
I think it's getting worse. Listen, we'll do the next one in Mallorca. Thank you so much for joining us today. You've just come off the back of the Big Summit, which is BigCommerce's big event. Is it annual? Tell us a little bit about what happens.
Yeah, so Big Summit is our flagship partner and customer event. So Tottenham graciously hosted us at their stadium. Tottenham is a BigCommerce customer, and we had 400 partners, over 200 customers there, and our exec team, which was great. It was amazing to have a lot of our key European partners and customers in one place and just hear more about how customers are thinking about the current environment, how they're thinking about optimizing their e-commerce site. And then we also were able to preview what we're calling the next big thing, which is product releases coming from BigCommerce. So it was a great day, lots of activities around the week. But I think, as I mentioned to you, I'm pleased to have it in the rearview mirror. It's quite a lot of engagement. But the highlight for us really was we had a number of customer panels. So they were on stage, talking to us about their digital transformations and how they're using BigCommerce and our tech partners to optimize their e-commerce instance.
Yeah, great. And I know, being part of the ecosystem, that sort of post-COVID has really accelerated people's thinking about shaping up, especially in the e-commerce space. What can we do? How can we make our tech stacks better serve our customers? And so you've touched on some of those product releases, and I know that there will have been some key themes that came out of the summit. So for you, what were the things that really stood out and you took away? And perhaps even some of the things that you guys at BigCommerce are actually releasing into the ecosystem to help. What are those things?
Yeah, so what we're hearing from a lot of customers is it was, I wouldn't say easy to be an e-commerce seller in COVID, but it certainly was much easier. You didn't have as much competition from in-store. And I think a lot of the brands that we work with especially on the retail side, had really significant growth through that period. And what we're seeing now is looking at a 2.0 digital transformation. So we're post-COVID, the retail environment has gotten much more difficult. How do we continue to compete and win? And so one of the product updates we've released is called Catalyst. So that's going to be our, I'm going to say, pre-built headless. So it just allows merchants to use a headless architecture. So composable, putting together a best of breed technology stack in a much easier way. So we still have Stencil, we still have out of the box, a great checkout, a great experience for our brands. But for those who want to move away from more of a monolithic structure into something that is more composable, it's going to make that a lot easier to do. So we're thrilled with that. And I think that ties in with a lot of the themes we're hearing from retailers, that they're looking to add a lot of the next gen technology tools, whether it's search, whether it's marketing automation, a lot of graphics optimization, all sorts of bells and whistles you can do to really make your site stand out versus your competitors.
So just on that headless, what was the name of the product or the release that you're calling it?
It's called Catalyst.
Catalyst. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I could come along as either a new or a sort of existing retailer. I can sign up for BigCommerce and I can use everything BigCommerce in my stack, but I can swap out some components if I want it, because you've now made that really easy. So I could use BigCommerce products to drive everything in a kind of monolithic way, but I could actually have the flexibility to use something else in the future if I wanted. Is that right?
Exactly. And we have Vercel is our infrastructure partner. So we've got it makes it much easier to be headless out of the box. Whereas we've always had headless customers, but I would say the previous headless builds are very bespoke. So it's quite a project for a merchant or a brand to take on with their agency. Whereas now a lot of the agencies we work with are really excited about having this slightly easier, still customizable, but you're starting 40% of the way there instead of starting at a blank slate. We're very focused on optionality for merchants. So if you want to come in and get out of the box with us, that's great. If you want a fully super custom headless build, that's also fantastic. But Catalyst will help bridge the middle to give you that benefits of composable without fully starting from a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah, that's great. I like that because having been involved in a lot of e-commerce businesses, you almost have to start monolithic because you're starting with very little resource. You have to use the cheaper, easier off the shelf products, right? But then you're always going to have this transition product down the line where you're going to probably want to swap out some components and use a sort of headless approach or a composable approach. But that means there's always this project to do. Whereas now I can actually start with a modular headless composable architecture and future proof. Like that's a terrible phrase, but like it helps you future proof, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're working with agencies and some customers that are launching with Catalyst now, but we're really excited about bringing that. And I think really focused on our partner ecosystem and working with a best of breed and allowing brands to come in and bring their own, each brand is different, right? You may be a retailer of a similar size, but you can have a totally different approach to how you want to manage your tech stack. And so we allow you to have that customization while also steering you to potential a best of breed stack if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's exciting. A tricky question for you, if you don't mind. How moving from that sort of monolith space that you've been in at BigCommerce, how does that make your executives feel about having this composable marketplace app center environment where perhaps BigCommerce isn't delivering all the value? How does that make you guys feel? Have you just accepted it, or has there been some tricky internal soul searching to go through?
So I think the interesting thing about BigCommerce is we've always been very partner centric. So open SaaS is one of our principles in how we work with customers and partners. So I would say we've always been able to allow customers to use our stencil of our core product, but we've never been pushing you onto BigCommerce branded solutions. So our customers have always been able to have really free choice when it comes to partners. That's probably in contrast to some of the other e-com platforms out there that may push you onto their own branded or white labeled products. So we've always had headless as an option, and some of our larger merchants do have fully headless builds. This Catalyst product is really just bridging the gap of if you're a mid-market or a small enterprise merchant, you want the benefits of headless without the extreme agency build cost and time and duration. So it's just going to help you get live much more quickly. But we've always had that, I would say, a anti-monolithic approach where we want merchants to use best of breed partners. We aren't pushing you onto BigCommerce marketing automation or BigCommerce search. And we want you to be able to pick and choose the partners that you're working with. So less of a strategic transition for us and more of a recognition that we want to help merchants get to a composable and headless build without taking on the kind of building of the house. We're pre-building the house. I like that. Actually, that's a new analogy. Yeah. It's a prefab. Yeah. It's a prefab house, right? With some customization options.
But listen, we need more prefab houses in e-commerce. We certainly need more prefab houses in the UK because we've got a problem. But that's a different subject altogether. What else came out at the summit? What other themes were there knocking around that were really important?
Yeah, I think we're starting to see omnichannel is a buzzword for the past 5 years. You and I know you can't go to any event without an omnichannel panel, but we're starting to see merchants do really interesting things with buy online, pick up in store, same day delivery, using their stores as fulfillment centers for same day delivery, especially in urban centers, and really focusing on how customers interact with their brand and practicalities. So we have a merchant or a customer that has kind of large scale fencing and things. So think of going to a garden center and you want to buy plants outside and you don't want to have to load up your trolley and haul all your stuff inside through the checkout. So they're using integrations so they can check you out on a consumer off the shelf Android tablet, have a remote checkout station, not have to shove you through the normal point of sale system, And doing a lot of buy online, pick up in store is great for certain products where you can't ship them easily. So plants, dog food, anything that's heavy, anything that's really breakable, or even just being able to go online and look for, I don't know, let's say you're doing a DIY project and you need some bricks, being able to go online and say, okay, my local location of this home center has bricks and they're going to be ready in 30 minutes. So I can just show up, show my code to the sales associate, get loaded up and be on my way and not have to deal with walking around, trying to find the item, all that stuff. So I think omni-channel in the sense of both endless aisle, so understanding what isn't in stock, how can I order it, but also just the realities of the fact that we're very last minute. We want same day delivery. We want to be able to come in and check out easily, and really carrying that through to the customer journey. So very customer centric when it comes to omnichannel, which I think is a really great transition as an end customer.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and I think omnichannel has still got a long way to go and a lot of adoption to be had. Absolutely. I like what you're saying in terms of how people are starting to use it in a kind of smart way, in a customer centric way to actually deliver that value to the customer. It's not just about, oh, the customer's in this channel, but actually using it in a smart way. Cool. Nice. I like that. What else are your customers talking about?
Conversion just continues to be a huge conversation, and conversion with it the broadest sense. It's such a competitive retail environment. It's no secret that, especially in Europe, the consumer macro is challenging, especially if you're in the luxury side, selling clothes.
What's the consumer macro? What do you mean by that?
Well, I guess the overwhelming cost of living pressure on consumers, on end consumers. So I would say the competition for discretionary income is very high because consumers continue to struggle with cost of living, local council tax increases. We still seem to have quite high electricity rates, gas or fuel costs, et cetera. So food inflation is still a thing. So you would say that the average consumer has less discretionary income now than they did 12 or 24 months ago. And so the competition as a retailer or brand for that incremental dollar is quite high. And when we have brands and customers that go through the work of getting a consumer on their website, ensuring that those consumers are transacting. So if I have done the hard work, let's say you're looking for some Nike trainers, if I've done the hard work of my search engine optimization, my Google ads, getting you onto my site, ensuring that I'm giving you enough great graphics, a great search experience, a great checkout experience to actually be a transacting customer.
Yeah, understood. And now, of course, you've got social channels where obviously they're driving a lot of top of funnel and referrals over to websites, but you're competing with social content and distraction. So people are distracted. And so it's harder work, in fact, to get people over because consumers just have less attention span, or they're distracted by more social things, or they think about buying a product and they just carry on scrolling and forget or whatever. But so if you've done the hard work of getting someone over to your website to ultimately go and convert and buy something, you want to make sure that you're doing that. And what specific things, so if you've got all those challenges from the macro consumer economic point of view, and then you've got those different components of a e-commerce and checkout process. What are the different components of that process at the summit last week, and what are people thinking of doing with those different components? Was there any kind of insight or anything really interesting that came out?
So I think in the kind of upfront general website, graphics are absolutely critical. So we actually at BigCommerce made an acquisition a few months ago called MakeSwift, which is a graphics editor, which just allows brands to run and manage their graphics online in a much more easy way. From a marketing technology perspective, we're seeing such a focus on SMS marketing. So working with partners, like we work with Attentive, for example, abandoned basket emails, reminder emails. I think we all probably have a bit of a love-hate relationship with those. I don't mind receiving them if they have a discount code, by the way, so to help me complete my purchase. But this notion of, and I'm sure you've had this experience, maybe I'm on my phone adding something to a basket, ordering, and then I get a Slack or I get a text or I get an email. And then, to your point earlier, you're distracted. You may never come back to complete the transaction. How can I remind you that you have something there, tempt you back to complete that transaction? So marketing technology is huge, and search is really important. And we see a lot of new AI uses in search, but this notion of knowing that when you search for trainers, that you're a man based on the behind the scenes, non-GDPR violating information we have about you, and being able to show you great results and intuit what you're looking for. And I think really good search on a website, especially if you have more challenging products. So you may be a builder, maybe B2B, maybe a retailer with both men's, women's, and kids categories. Showing you the right results increases your propensity to complete a transaction. And so we're seeing merchants really focused on these little things they can do to ensure that they can get you to go through as a transaction and also to keep coming back. And then payments, but maybe that's a slightly bigger and absolutely critical topic of that kind of overall conversion journey.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about payments. Don't worry. Everyone watching this, when's he going to talk about payments? People watching this are thinking that. But we will talk about payments conversion in a moment. But I am amazed that there still isn't more adoption of like basket follow-up or via email or SMS. And then, of course, incentivizing me to go and finish my process. Because maybe I did just get distracted. Maybe I did just have to put the kids in the bath or whatever it is, or was watching a cat video. I don't know. But like, I'm surprised that there isn't more of that, because that would help. That makes sense to me. And then, of course, when I'm on site, or if I'm potentially could be a repeat customer, I'm surprised that clothing brands or brands that I do semi-regularly buy something with don't tell me exactly what to buy. Like, actually, that would be helpful. Yeah, in my shoe size, in my waist size, etc., etc. Just help me out here. It would make a lot of sense. But we're still a long way from adopting that stuff. I can't believe it. But it sounds like you're beginning at BigCommerce to have that tool set together to make that possible.
Definitely. And with technology partners, I think one of the things that has a lot of potential, and we've been talking to merchants about, is the kind of also interested in category, right? So if I'm buying a suit, so one of our merchants is The Fold. We love working with The Fold. They do really beautiful women's work clothes. Definitely suggest shoes that you think would go, you know what I've added to my basket. To your point, I may have bought shoes from you before. Do you have a pair of shoes that would go great with this dress or this suit? Pushing really positive recommendations is incredibly helpful. And we're seeing some of our customers also focus on post-transaction. So in an order summary email, can you also tempt me to add something else to my basket? Can you tempt me to add another item, and increasing that average order value, which is so important for our retailers. So I think there's a lot to do. We do have a couple customers that do it really well. So Sarah Raven is a garden merchant. Due to the social pressures of living in an English village, tried to do a little bit of garden stuff. Same example that we had, I added something to a basket, got distracted, and that reminder email, I had a high propensity to purchase. I wanted these items. And to be honest, I didn't even fully realize I hadn't checked out yet. And so just going back, one-click checkout is super important. I do think that customers really need to think about this. How can I make it as easy as possible to get the thing I was initially looking for? Because it is very competitive in the retail space, and being able to Google sweet peas, I could land on 25 different sites that would send me some mail order sweet peas. So how can I ensure that I'm actually transacting on your site?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a key thing that you mentioned is that speed of checkout, especially if you've put something in your basket. And I think e-commerce sites are actually having to compete with some of those social channels, some of those other channels where the retailer may not make as much money, or may not actually therefore own the journey that the customer goes on. And so some of those other channels are making it really easy for you to check out. And so you've got to, and so therefore our expectation of checkout has, risen. We want it to be really fast. We want you to know exactly how I want to pay, where it should be shipped, etc. Make it really easy. Because as you're saying, if you've got high intent customers at the back end of the process, you want to convert them because they're the worst sales that you can lose.
That's where we see some of the accelerated checkout solutions be really critical. So one of the stats that I really like is, so Stripe has this statistic, which they say that 60% of customers will drop out of a checkout flow if it takes longer than 2 minutes. And if you time yourself doing a checkout flow on a non-optimized checkout, it can take a lot longer than 2 minutes, especially if you're being asked to enter your full PAN, which is that full 16-digit card number. So we absolutely have to have merchants think about, what is my overall customer journey? You can have the most beautiful graphics and the best search, but if it's really hard to actually get your credit card in and write out your address, it's going to be really challenging for you to have a high converting site.
Yeah, agreed. I absolutely agree with that. I think if there's a massive challenge getting eyes on your site and getting people into your site. That earlier, you don't want to lose out on the people that actually have high intent to go and check out by having some horrendous checkout process. I would just focus on those two things if I had to prioritize. I'd forget a little bit about the stuff in the middle, like product descriptions and images to a degree. Like as long as you get someone there and then solve their problem and get that thing into the basket, you want to make sure if it's in the basket that they actually go and check out. And then the third priority would be to make beautiful web pages with images and descriptions, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's craziness. It's highly competitive. But again, I think I'm surprised that more people aren't doing it, but it sounds like at BigCommerce, you're putting these things together to make it possible, totally possible with BigCommerce.
We are, and we're very focused on, so our core out-of-the-box checkout, we have statistics on our website about that's the highest converting checkout verified by a third party in terms of that data in e-commerce. And we're actually the beta partner for PayPal's new Fastlane product. So that's an accelerated checkout from PayPal. We've heard, and they've said publicly that at our big summit last week, they're going to be launching in EMEA by the end of 2024. We already have a number of customers on it in the US, loving it. And that's using the power of the PayPal ecosystem. So they have over 400 million consumers that they have your identifiable details. And so they can send you through a really quick and easy checkout flow, which is absolutely important. So being able to retain that information of your card number, your billing and shipping information, just having that experience. If you go through a really bad flow, it's, so my side story on this is that my dog is on special food and the website where I get it has a really terrible old UK payment provider checkout where I have to fully enter my PAN, fully enter my shipping address, and then fully enter my billing address. And I'm so frustrated every time. I'm a high intent to purchase. I need the food. It's one of the only providers in the UK for it. But it would be so much easier for me if they had an accelerated process, or at least had carried over some of these core principles of allowing people to check the box to translate shipping to billing address. Don't make me enter my choose my own card type, go from my PAN what my card type is, right? As a consumer, you should never be asked to choose between Visa debit and Visa credit on a list. That's a very old school setup. So I really encourage.
I'm not going to say it publicly, but I know who it is. I'm for sure.
Okay.
But anyway.
So I really encourage customers and brands, be customer centric. This is a really competitive environment and you've done so much of the hard work. And that's why we see if we have a customer that has high cart abandonment rates, we have growth consultants here that work for us at BigCommerce to work with merchants and consult with them to try to help understand where are we dropping out in the funnel? How can we help you? Because it's essentially free money. It's pure margin, right? If they weren't going to transact in your current setup, let's help you get that higher, because a few percentage points of conversion makes a ton of difference of overall payment conversion. And then overall on your site, 0.2% uplift on your full funnel conversion. It can be an incredible impact for a medium-sized business.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge, actually. And I think coming back to those statistics that were published by Stripe last year, they had a statistic around that 20% drop off when they hit the payment process. So those high intent customers have gone through, they've got to that payment process, they do want to check out, they've gone through, they've perhaps even put in their shipping address, and then they fall off because the payment process is too hard, or it's not a local payment method for them, whatever the reason might be. Like, you cannot lose that 20%. And then of course you've got payment providers who have acceptance rates of like sub 80% for
Sure.
a retail e-commerce store, and you're like, I'm potentially losing 40% here, even more of my potential conversion. What's going on with you guys? What are you thinking about in terms of that conversion at the payment process? How do you guys work with payment processors and merchants to look at that specifically?
Sure. So we're focused on a couple of things. So one is your local payment methods, right? So if you're transacting in Brazil, we know that you need Boleto. Boleto is a key local payment method in Brazil. So understanding, where are you trying to sell? How can I work with my PSP to build a payment stack that is going to, and payment methods that are going to suit my consumer base? Klarna is a great example. If you are a high street retailer with a high percentage of 18 to 35-year-old female customers, we see much higher average order value, a higher propensity to be a return customer if you have BNPL, especially Klarna. In the US, we see Affirm has a slightly different consumer base. So actually over half of our BigCommerce merchants who have a BNPL enabled have 2 or more enabled, because each of the buy now pay laters has their own kind of loyalty and network effect. So do I have BNPL? Do I have Apple Pay? Apple Pay is huge in especially the UK, the US, very, very common transaction. A lot of our merchants will do 8 to 10% of their transactions will be through Apple Pay. So you want to be able to offer Apple Pay. But those local payment methods are really key. You know, the Nordics, for example, have their own. So ensuring that if you're selling into Europe, Europe is not a monolith, right? Or Europe is not homogenous. Each country has its own.
That's right.
Payment orientation. In the Netherlands, it's Ideal. So the bank transfer method, it's very old school. A lot of transactions happen on Ideal. So you want to be able to offer Ideal in the Netherlands. So just really knowing your customer and working with both the BigCommerce customer success team, but also your payment provider to say, these are the markets I'm selling in. Where do you see the highest percentage of customers? What payment methods do they use? And making sure you're orientating towards that. But local payment methods are key, and especially in LATAM and Asia, absolutely table stakes. You have to provide a really good slate of local payment methods to be competitive, because someone can go buy their Nike trainers on another site, right? That offers the payment method that the consumer wants to use. So it can be a really hard lesson for retailers if they just have cards on a checkout. That's not necessarily going to be a competitive proposition in individual countries.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of those LATAM countries, they actually have payment methods where someone deposits some money through an ATM. And it's some guy with a paper bag brings you money, and then the trainers get posted to them. So yeah, I mean, it's wild, but you have to enable this stuff if that's what's required in that locale.
And look, some of it is, so we're working with a customer now, and I think they submitted 18 payment methods for some of their LATAM business. And we had to work with them and say, okay, actually, we think that less than 1% of your volume would go through some of these. Let's not have one of those checkouts that you were going around a few years ago where it had 36 buttons on the checkout. So let's optimize this a little bit. Let's be smart about your customer base and the markets you're selling into. And also, using a platform like BigCommerce where we can have a different payment provider and different payment methods per market, which is really critical. So then if you're based in Brazil, I can show you Boleto, but if you're based in Mexico, it would be hidden. So making sure you've got that dynamic opportunity based on where a consumer is based to show them their local payment methods is really critical.
Yeah, and that's part of the big change BigCommerce checkout process? Is it like that is something that you guys have worked on ensuring those payment methods are integrated and therefore look consistent and have a good UX to help that checkout process? Is that right?
Yeah, and we actually just released, you can use a different payment provider per storefront. So if let's say you've got a UK store and an India store, and in India you're using more of a local payment provider for regulatory reasons, but in the UK you're using Adyen or Stripe, we can allow you to hook up a different PSP to different storefronts, which is really helpful for brands that are running multi-country and may have different needs. And especially
that's really good.
Developing markets.
Yeah, that's really good. And I talk about that a little bit with some of my posts, because if, as a merchant, you obviously not only want to be able to convert, so you need a payment method is convenient for your the local audience, but also you want to reduce your cost of sale. You may want to actually transact locally, which may cost you less than working through one particular provider across the globe. So yeah, there's a few reasons why you might need that, but certainly initially that getting that sale is the key thing first and foremost. That's cool, because not that many platforms can run that multi-storefront. I can think of a big, well-known one that is really struggling with that, but not you guys. So that's super helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a differentiator for us. I think our ability to work with customers who have a global presence and want to sell into markets. I mean, one of our mid-market UK merchants in the health and supplement space, I found out recently, I hadn't realized that they're selling through one of our cross-border providers in over 140 countries. So they have the capability to ship. And using a cross-border provider or just using an e-commerce platform that can be really flexible really helps you if you want to have those global ambitions for your brand outside of maybe being more dominant regionally.
Do you think of that payment stuff as part of the composable ideology of BigCommerce then as well? Because typically payments hasn't really come into the composable arena in the same way that some of the CMSs, other components have. Are you guys beginning to think about that? Is that part of what you would call composable?
Yeah, so I think so payments is, I mean, I'm talking my own book, right, as running our payments business, but I think payments is the most critical piece of the e-com journey. So for us, being able to choose your own payments provider has always been a really core feature of working with BigCommerce, which is in contrast to other providers, which may be pushing you onto their own white label solution. So we're absolutely happy for you to work with, add in some of your core markets and add global E for cross-border for the sales you're doing into Latin America, and then add your India storefront is powered by PayU. I think that's how you optimize, right? You optimize authorization rates and cost and local payment methods. So we do have a number of customers who are working with multiple PSPs, a different provider for cross-border, and we really welcome that. So at BigCommerce, we have 3 sort of flagship payment providers that we work with quite a lot globally. That would be PayPal, Adyen, and Stripe. But certainly we're also working with Checkout.com. We've got a really large joint merchant with them in the Middle East, among others. WorldPay, my former team at WorldPay, who we have very warm feelings for. And then some of the local providers, Barclays here in the UK, some of the US providers, Chase, for example. So it's a really broad range. I think that's a feature of our payments offering, is we have something for everyone and can really help you optimize for your own individual business needs.
So there are some merchants who will use BigCommerce and they'll use one of our partners called Brightpearl, which is an ERP system. And so they might use Brightpearl for different things, but ultimately they might capture a payment or they might do bigger orders through their ERP. The challenge that I found in the market, which most people don't realize, is if you use the payment solution that is being resold to you by your e-commerce platform, they've white labeled it. You can't actually take that and use it on another piece of software like an ERP system or an invoicing software. You just can't use it. Like, it's confined to within that monolith or that e-com platform, which then you've got to go and get another either payment solution, or you just can't use a more kind of mature setup to run your business. So yeah, for me, like obviously at Just, we're very much pro the free market choice of payment services, and being able to actually put in new services where possible. I don't know, it might be a fraud solution, or it might be a particular, I know MasterCard and others have got their new wallet solutions coming out. So being able to compose and string together your own payment process and workflow to increase that 1 to 10% maybe of the acceptance rate is really key for maturing retail brands, or even B2B wholesale brand where applicable.
Yeah, and B2B is where we see real differentiation for BigCommerce versus competitors. So it's a significant and growing part of our business. And it is because there's a lot of really unique payment needs for B2B, right? You need those ERP connections. You may also have a consumer business as well. So we work with, for example, MKM, the building supply company, and they both are selling into the trades. So you may have a line of credit with them, be transacting for your business, but I could also walk in and buy plastic piping for my home DIY projects, and they need to be order online. So they need to be able to serve both types of customers. And that creates a lot of back-end complexity in how you run your business. You need to be able to work with a platform that allows that customization. And so that's, I think, a big differentiator for us at BigCommerce is our ability to work with B2B merchants that do have a lot of back-end complexity, a lot of SKUs, a B2C and a B2B component, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. I try not to walk into those trade merchants. Those guys scare me too much. I feel emasculated when I go in there. But anyway, that again is another story for our other podcasts. But I'd love to ask you about open banking. And as the person who's in charge of those partnerships at BigCommerce for payments, what do you see? Open banking is in one way a great solution, especially in my mind for B2B, but also it's still a messy landscape. No one's quite sure when and what it can do. What are you guys seeing at BigCommerce in terms of both partner alliances and adoption by the different kinds of users that you have?
Yeah, great question. So I would say not to create doubt around open banking. I think I get a lot of open banking pitches every week, and open banking is a great solution. As a consumer, I use open banking to pay my credit card bill, easily hooked up to my bank account. I would say we don't receive a lot of customer requests, so merchant requests for open banking from the merchants we're working with. I think it hasn't quite reached the consumer in that way where it's quite easy for me to use Apple Pay or a credit card or a debit card. And so outside of working with utilities or telcos, et cetera, it's not as popular. What I would say where we're seeing more interest is in a use case, for example, a B2B merchant where they want to allow small orders to be paid with a credit card or a debit card, but a larger order to be paid through open banking. Or that could be true if I'm selling home furnishings and I want you to, anything sub 500 pounds or 1,000 pounds, I'll allow on a credit card. But if it's above 1,000 pounds, to control my credit card transaction costs, I may push you, Nick, through an open banking flow. Say, oh, this 3,000 pound sofa, here's an open banking checkout flow. When we hear from merchants concerned about open banking, it's often around the fact that customers perceive it to be harder to have chargebacks or protection. Certainly ordering some goods online, what happens if something is not delivered or the goods aren't as expected? I think consumers are positive on the kind of classic American Express, being able to lodge a chargeback with one click. Maybe it's harder with some of the other card brands, but that does feel that I have a bit of consumer protection. So direct debit flows or open banking flows in that way, not so much. But I think the use case can be really good for B2B, especially working with small trades where the person transacting likely has access to the open banking details. So we're dipping our toe in, very open to working with open banking partners. But from a payment strategy perspective, we really are very much BigCommerce customer led. So we're really working on adding new partners and solutions when we do have a customer that's looking to add a specific solution or solve a business need that we can't solve with the existing partners. So open for discussion. We actually have one open banking partner building an integration to BigCommerce right now for one of our B2B merchants. So excited to see about adoption for that and how that goes.
Cool. I think you and I should hang out more because I have the same opinion of open banking as you. So that's really interesting to hear all of that and what you're seeing at BigCommerce in terms of the adoption. I do think it is better placed right now for B2B commerce.
Yeah.
Interestingly, what you mentioned about some decision opportunities at that point of checkout, that is something that we've just been working on here as well at Shuttle. It's, as a merchant, you might say, hey, I want to use this payment method, but disable it for larger purchases. An obvious one is, hey, I just don't want to get the card fees for big checkout items, but I want to push someone down a kind of account to account route, and that might be open banking. So yeah, we've just been working on the ability to set that up as a merchant. Cool. So yeah, absolutely think that key where you've got merchants who are selling either sort of bulk orders, or they may have furniture stores where they've got large items, but also really small items. Yeah, very interesting. That's
cool. I think the key that we talk about with customers is you want to make sure that you're not getting dropouts from your checkout because of your restriction on payment methods, right? So I think if you're working with trades and you're sending them a reminder to pay an invoice, and that's pushing them through an open banking flow, that's probably fine. From a consumer perspective, you want to know your consumers, your end customer well enough to know how they may want to pay. And card fees aren't everything if you're going to lose transactions, right? You'd actually rather pay the 3%, the 2.5% or the 3% and get the order through than if that person is going to take their business elsewhere. So I think it's quite a fine line actually for merchants to walk. And I'm really interested to see how the adoption goes and how actual business outcomes are.
Yeah, I agree with you. And also, if a card payment can be deposited in your account in a couple of days versus a week or two, make that happen. Cash flow is king. Winning the customer is the ultimate, but cash flow ultimately is also extremely important. So don't worry about the fees. Increase your prices if you need to. just get them.
Maybe, yeah.
Think about making your business more efficient. That's what I'd say. I like it. Okay, we're coming into land, Michaela. What is on the horizon for you at BigCommerce these coming months, this coming quarter?
Yeah, we are doing a lot of work with our existing customer base. So as I mentioned, we do these payments growth consultations. So my team's talked to over 200 BigCommerce merchants in the first quarter. And what we're really doing is a bit of a checkout MOT, payments MOT, understanding. For those of you who may not be in the UK, that's a car safety check. How would I describe it? But basically helping you understand, looking at your current payment stack, any issues that you may be having, concerns about chargebacks. Maybe we think you might do well being referred to a specialist fraud provider like a Signified or a No Fraud, right? If that's a big concern for you, or you seem to be having quite a lot of friendly fraud. So just really checking in with our merchants and letting them know that we're here to help them build an optimal payment stack, refer in different specialist providers, help them work with some of our core providers, get great rates and a great converting checkout on top of their existing BC opportunities. So that's a huge focus for us. And then continuing to work with net new partners. We're doing a lot of exciting new work in Latin America and in Asia. So recognizing that there are 8 million APMs in those markets and local payment providers. So adding there where we need to meet customer demand, and continuing to just grow the team and be really focused on helping our customers understand the importance of payments and checkout in their overall e-commerce site.
And I think the key differentiator going into the next era of e-commerce is actually your provider sitting down with you, looking at your business and injecting that wisdom where possible, because you have all of these merchants. But for a single merchant, they may be brand new to the game. I know mid-market merchants who still don't really understand the payment space, still don't understand what it is that they could do to improve their business. And so having that opportunity to speak to someone like BigCommerce as your provider, aside from the technology, is a huge benefit.
It is, and I think what we see, we work a lot with directors of e-commerce. If you're in a more of a mid-market business, you're doing 10, 15, 20, 25 million a year, there's a lot going on for you. You're unlikely to have someone who's dedicated to payments. And it is true that some of our larger merchants have really sophisticated and large e-com teams, but often we're working with small teams that are really trying to keep the site as optimized as possible, work on inventory, work on internal processes. So having that person that can give you a bit of an agnostic view as to which providers might provide you with a great solution that works well with your BigCommerce storefront, right? Because it's no good if I recommend something to you that doesn't work well with BC. We need everything to work really well together. So it's really fun. Yeah. It's really rewarding to be part of those conversations. And we've had some amazing merchant uplift stories. So we're working on some case studies that should be out in the next few months, talking a little bit about merchants that have worked with our internal team on payments.
Oh, very cool.
And some of the outcomes. Yeah, we're excited for that.
Yeah. Love that. Go and talk to BC if you think there's room for improvement. And I'm sure there is, but it sounds like they're willing to talk to you. Great. That's the message for those merchants. I didn't prime you for this, but what one thing would you say to the payment service providers out there? What could they do to improve themselves or the service that they provide for merchants? What would you say, looking at it from your point of view?
In a really general sense, we've all been very focused on cost, in this environment. I think we've seen some of the customer support at some providers get scaled way back. And if you're working with a $20 million merchant, they want to talk to a human. They want to work with you. I hear enough bad experiences about merchants not feeling supported, and that's more of a generalization. But I think to all of our technology partners and including the PSPs, invest in your support. Having a great support experience is really valuable to your end merchants. And I know that CFO suite is wanting you to cut support heads because they view them as a cost center. But I think it's really important to have that personal support. So don't just staff AI chatbots. That is not going to be helpful. If a merchant's having a payments issue, they don't want to talk to an AI chatbot, no matter how realistic it is in terms of the conversation. So I think leading with support and having that continues to be a really winning proposition to keep your merchants and keep them happy. So that would be my wish to the PSPs out there is let's all focus on leveling up our support. And at BigCommerce, we're also additionally investing in our customer support infrastructure. We know that's so important. So we are taking our own medicine when it comes to that as well.
Yeah, I, again, wholeheartedly agree with you. That is what I'd say. The number one piece of feedback that we get when merchants come in and say, hey, I'm looking for a new payment provider or a new service is because the current one is not good to work with. And they just mean in terms of they just don't reply to my messages. They're not helping me. They're just, And so it's around customer service. What I'd love to add into that, which is just riffing off the back of what you said, if financial controllers and operators at payment service providers understood or thought about for a second that if they can increase a merchant's acceptance rate by working more closely with that merchant and understanding their business a little bit better, that 1%, 2% increase is actually going to earn more fees for that payment provider as well. So it is a false economy to cut your customer service and actually go and work with some of those kind of key or even lower down the chain merchants that you might have today and keep them because, there's lots of choice out there and it's getting easier to swap it in and out. So cool. Thank you, Michaela Weber, GM of Payments over at BigCommerce. I really appreciate your time today. Great to chat. And I wish you all the best over at BigCommerce for the next couple of quarters.
Thanks so much, Nick.